Welcome, everyone. Welcome to our Inter-IFAST webinar series on memories of His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. We're so grateful to have all of you here this evening, and we're so excited because we have a special guest. You know, as we share every time we come on, we try to bring you special guests so that you can hear about Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj from many different sources. So we wanted to just remind you that Inter-IFAS is a branch of IFAS and is founded by His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And we're at the Institute House, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj's Institute House in Gita Nagari. And so we're going to welcome tonight one of those persons that personally served Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj here in Gita Nagari. He was one of his personal servants. And we're going to invite him to share some memories with you. I know he has a lot. He even wrote a little book, actually, about some of his memories with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. So Jayadeva, he actually joined in Detroit, Michigan. And I can't remember the year that he came to the Institute. I can't remember. He'll tell us. And anyway, he traveled with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj and served him very personally. He has a beautiful wife and 2 daughters, and he's an artist by profession. He actually teaches in high school, teaches art. He's also a writer, and he lives in New Jersey. Welcome, Jayadeva Prabhu. Welcome to
our Mata
series. Hari Hari.
Hare Krishna.
So,
I guess everyone knows Ekavira.
Yeah. So Jayadeva Prabhu, can you share some memories with us? You have so many, I know, from Detroit and also from being here in Gita Nagari, serving him. So please share a few of those with us.
Well, first, I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for, arranging all of this. And, I'm always very eager to hear about Gurudev, and it's just been really enlivening, to every week to know, like, there's going to be something to hear about Gurudev, and just hearing from the devotees and disciples and everyone, that it's just very enlivening. So I appreciate everyone's efforts for putting this together and for you facilitating. It's a very nice service. I also just wanted to pray to Gurudev really quickly so that I have his little photo here.
Okay.
So I just want to pray to him so I can somehow say something that might also help others in some way. So Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shmati Bhakti Tirtha Swami Namaste Krishna Shikora Karuna Shakti Bhakti Tirtha Swami Namaste. So yeah, you had mentioned the little book that I put together of memories. So that was something, I think I did this a couple years ago. 2018. So this was this little book of memories. And I kind of had always been interested that, like I said, it's always nice and enlivening hearing devotees' memories of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And, I was kind of encouraging others to kind of share their stories. And because I was thinking the other day, it's like, people have all these experiences with the guru, and you don't really think about it, but once the guru departs, it's like all of those memories and those stories are living with the disciples. And as time is progressing and we're getting older, and I was just thinking, like, once we leave, kind of those stories leave, and those memories leave. And you think 50, 75, 100 years from now, people might look back and think, like, oh, like, who was this person? And, almost like us looking back now at, like, Chaitanya Charitamrita, or, like, and hearing these stories. So I just think it'd be really wonderful, like, all the disciples to kind of put something. And I know we were talking, like, this would be great to put this whole series of memories from the Zoom interviews, put that into a book. So I think that would be really nice to have that.
You said you would transcribe it, right?
Oh yeah, I'd love to transcribe the different lectures or interviews. And actually it says here, I was encouraged by Mother Vrajalila to print in this book format. It said, Mother Vrajalila promised that if I made this book first, she would also make a book about her memories and experiences. So I'm still holding you to that. You have to write the book. Because I think you have the most seniority and years with Gurudev, so there's so much packed in there that in your heart and memories that we need to hear. So, but anyway, not to put you on the spot. So yeah, I joined initially in the temple in Detroit. That was in '95. Actually, I moved in '94, but then got initiated in '95 when Gurudev started coming to the Detroit temple. And it was actually under the whole moniker of IFAST that he came there and started doing the programs with Ladini Shakti and Radha Sundari. So I started going to those programs, and that's where I first met him and everything. But kind of the first thing I was thinking about was like what exactly to share, because obviously I don't want to read this entire book. That would just be hours and kind of excessive. But so I thought maybe like to just focus in on like a particular theme. And so I was taking notes and kind of focusing on just the theme of selflessness and Gurudev's kind of whole, demeanor and sort of focus on compassion and selflessness. So anyway, the first memory that I was thinking of that I wanted to share was kind of an embarrassing one, which a lot of my interactions with Gurudev were embarrassing sort of life lessons, kind of things, just dumb things I was doing, and that was kind of looking back like, why was I so dumb? Like I was just like neophyte. I don't know if it was just my age or I was just like, that was just our relationship, like me always doing something like, anyway. So the first memory I had, just kind of focusing on this point of serving others. Because in the evening, sometimes what would happen would be, he would go back up to the Institute House, maybe doing a program at the temple. And I would have to go up in the evening to then do the emails or like set up his bed or, whatever the services were. So I remember this one particular time, someone else drove him up to the Institute House, and I said, should I come with you? And he said, no, he's like, you can take prasadam and come up later. And so I remember he left with one devotee. They took him to the house and I stayed back. And then I got a ride with Bhakti Derek, which I wonder what happened. I don't know what happened to him. I lost touch with him, but so anyway, he was giving me a ride back to the Institute House after prasadam. So I went, we were driving along the road, and as we're driving, I see this one Mataji, a god sister, and it was late at night. It was very dark because, like Gitanagari, there were no street lights and things. It was like pitch black, and it was just kind of like the headlights you would see on the road. And so we saw this Mataji just walking down the side of the road. And I remember we just drove past her, and I was like, that's weird. And then I said to Bhakti Derek, I was like, was that such and such? And he's like, oh yeah, I think that was. And it was just like, we didn't think much of it. We're like, why is she walking late at night? But of course, in my neophyte mind, I processed and I said, oh, but I have to get to Gurudev because he's waiting for me. And we have to do the emails. And he's, if I'm late, he's probably going to be upset. So we drive up the road to the Institute House. And then we walk in. I walk in, I pay obeisances. First thing Gurudev says to me, he turns, and he's kind of like in this, like, not frantic, but he was like in this concerned sort of mode. And he was on the phone. So he gets off the phone, and then he turns to me and he says, he's like, you didn't happen to see such and such devotee. They've gone missing. They just like walked off the farm. And I was like, well, yeah, Gurudev, we saw her driving up here. She's walking on the road. And, I was thinking, oh, he was going to be like happy that I, saw this devotee and I kind of like gave some information that would be helpful. But he he actually turned like very, not angry, but he was like, very heavy mood. And he said to me, why didn't you stop? And he said, I know you're a brahmachari and this, and, and you're, I was waiting for you to come up here. He's like, but you should have stopped and asked if they were okay. And that just like hit me, like, because I think it's easy to fall into this conception of, oh, I'm serving guru, but then, we kind of neglect others around us, or, the other devotees, thinking like, oh, this service is so important. But I don't think I had even internalized it like that. When that incident happened, it was just kind of that reaction of, I have to serve my guru. But then later reflecting on it, like, the real service to him would have been to be concerned about that devotee's welfare, And I think that was just a real sort of devotional life lesson for me, in particular, that, the way that we can best serve the guru isn't always that direct seva, but, just in being able to, follow his mood a little more closely. And that was his mood, that compassion and that care. And looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, like that's just common sense. Like, why did we not stop? Why did we not, like, hey, are you okay? Do you need a ride? Where are you going? Like, so that was just something that stuck out to me, and that was Gurudev's whole mood, like constantly was that, that concern for others. So that was just a really intense sort of lesson. Should I just keep going? Is this just free form?
Yeah, we'll let you know. Just keep going. Okay. We'll jump in.
Okay. So that was one thing. And then later, just kind of like the timeline of these memories just kind of jump around. There's no particular sort of coherence to this. Even in the book, this thing, it's just, they're kind of all just random jumbles of memories. So this next thing that kind of segued into from that memory was just an email that he had sent me later, very much later. This was like probably actually, let me take a look here. I had saved this email. Actually, I saved all the emails, but I was going to mention that later too. So this is an email he sent me. Let me see. I think it was in 2004, maybe. Anyway, the date's not so important. It's the message. But I just wanted to read this, also kind of focusing on this point of selflessness. He says, I'm glad to hear from you. I was just thinking deeply of you in the last 2 days, so I was expecting to get a letter from you soon. It was also Gurudev's mysticism. One time I asked him if he was consciously aware of appearing in our dreams. And you know how Gurudev, he just did that, like, it's like, sometimes that's there. And then he was just quiet. So yeah, I mean, so he kind of had that connection. So anyway, he says he's expecting to hear from me. And then he says, let me simply give you my example. I find nothing in this material world to be attractive. Everything that anyone does in the material world turns into some kind of disappointment. What makes me somewhat satisfied is that I am, one, still trying to be loyal to my spiritual master, and two, almost every day I'm able to do something or say something that helps someone else in their spiritual journey. And this is the part that really struck me with this. He says how satisfying it is to constantly try to see how to touch someone else's life in an auspicious way. As a matter of fact, this is one of the biggest joys of life, to be able to live a life where you're somehow adding value to someone else's life. And then he goes on, who are the people who are normally the happiest? Those who are intelligently selfless. Those who are constantly experiencing anxiety, success, or failure are generally those who are more selfish. Who are those who make themselves suffer so much? Again, those who are more selfish. And then he says here, because this is kind of an ongoing, it was an ongoing theme in our relationship with myself and my Guru Maharaj. It was this constant sort of striving for selflessness. So then he says here, however, being selfless is not just a mechanical act. This is why you have so much trouble when you try to be selfless. When you try to be selfless, you simply try to deny your feelings. Being genuinely selfless is not a matter of denial, but is simply a matter of appreciating others more, and not just appreciating those who fit into our desires or plans. I remember this reminded me, one time I kept asking him, I guess I was asking him a lot, because I would say, Gurudev, like, why is it so hard to be selfless? So one time I asked him, I remember I was sitting in his room with him at the Institute House, and we're, doing the emails, and afterwards, I remember he was standing up, kind of just pacing, like reading the emails. And I think I had said that again, like, Gurudev, why is it so difficult to be selfless? And then he stopped and he just looked at me and he's like, you realize you keep asking the same question over and over? And then he's like, maybe you need to look at that. And that's all I remember from his response. And I was like, well, wait. Then I remember thinking, like, well, what does that mean? But then I later realized he was telling me the answer. I just wasn't applying the solution. Anyway, so that email, for me, it symbolizes Gurudev's entire mood, of selflessness. And it was just, a nice little view into how, he was saying for his personal example, that those are the two things that are kind of, what some people say, oh, why do we wake up in the morning? Like, what makes you wake up in the morning? What's your motivation? And so it's interesting that Gurudev says it's his trying to be loyal to Srila Prabhupada. And then the other thing of just trying to add something to someone else's life, in an auspicious way, and trying to serve others. And so I think for me, like, that's trying to exemplify that, waking up every day and thinking, what can I do for someone else today? And then at the end of the day, before going to bed, thinking, what did I do today? What did I do for anyone today? And so that's just kind of a nice little meditation that I found has been very helpful, just in trying to be more imbibing the mood of Gurudev. So this just segues then into another thought I had. This was the time I remember for some reason, he really loved plants. And I don't know, I never really asked him why. I think I started learning my lesson to not ask him dumb questions because he would because you would know when you asked him something and it was like maybe too esoteric, or he would just be like, we'll see. Or because it's kind of that, like, he just would cut it off. Because one time he had said something too about there being higher beings in the atmospheric Gitanagari. And I asked him, I was like, Gurudev, like, are those like demigods? Or are they like, and he's like, and he didn't answer directly. He was just like, he's like, well, he's like, there's lower beings like ants and there's higher beings. And then that's all he said. So I was like, I was like, maybe I shouldn't have asked that question. Like, I can't comprehend the answer. Or the time I asked him if he was aware of his previous relationship with Srila Prabhupada, like as his spiritual master, as his guru. And then he was just quiet, and then he was like, to some extent. And then again was just quiet. And then there's like the tension in the car, and I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have asked that question. So anyway, I think that's why I didn't ask him why he liked plants so much, because he probably wouldn't have answered. So, but anyway, so we were out shopping plants. I think we had ended up at the Walmart in Lewistown. I think he was buying clothes there or something. Maybe like overalls or something for the farm. And he was looking at plants there too. But then we ended up going to Mifflintown to some nursery, and we were walking around, and I remember he was just like looking at all the plants and the ferns and the palm trees and things. And I remember he was like, some of them he was actually touching, like the leaves, and just like looking at them and walking around. And it was just him and I. We just drove out there. And this was right before he was going on a tour. He was going to go on another world tour. And so I was just kind of thinking, like, you know, it's so intense, like this traveling, like how does he go from all these countries and, you know, in such a short amount of time. And so I was just kind of reflecting on that with him. And I said to him, as we were walking out of the nursery back to the car, and I was like, oh, I'll just ask him, you know, like just kind of this heartfelt thing, and just kind of a, you know, appreciation. And I was like, Gurudev, like, how do you do this? Like, how do you travel? Like, it's just so intense, like the flying. And I was like, how do you do it? And I just remember he was getting in the car, and he turned and he looked at me, and he just had this big smile on his face. And he's just like, Jayadeva, he's like, you think about yourself too much. And then he just started laughing hysterically. And then he just got in the car, and that's all he said. And so it wasn't even like he was like, oh, you know, I do this or that, or he was just like, Jayadeva, think about yourself too much. And it was just like, that was the core of, like, it's kind of like the core of all instructions to me, you know, from Gurudev can kind of be encapsulated just in that one moment and that one sentence of him just saying, you know, that you think about yourself too much. And it really is the key. And, you know, I was thinking more about that, and, you know, the more, and even just in that email, the same thing was echoed, you know, who were the people that are miserable and full of anxiety are people who are more selfish. And the people who are happy are those who take that focus off themselves and serve others. And so, you know, that was the key to his empowerment, really, you know, to be able to travel like that and preach like that and barely eating, barely sleeping. You know, that came about from that just intense selflessness of not constantly thinking of the self. Because obviously, if you think of yourself, you're like, I don't want to travel like that. You know, I'm not going to go on a plane for hours and hours and then go from one country to another. And so yeah, he just like summed it up that, Jayadeva, you're just thinking about yourself too much. And if you don't think about yourself too much, that's how you can do those things. Just a couple more things here. It is starting to get cold out here now that the sun is dropping. You were right. You were right, Mata. So I should have listened to my Mata, see? This was, he actually had inscribed in my a copy of Spiritual Warrior 2. And I just, it was when I think I'd only maybe known him for a year or so. Can't remember the exact timing on it, but he signed in it, and he said that lust attacks us on the gross and the subtle level, and that it will constantly be defeated unless we become truly selfless. And then he signed off, yours in the struggle for unconditional love, Srila Krishnapad. So that kind of always was just the core, you know, again, going back to this idea of becoming more selfless. And it was just interesting how he was saying that the lust is not only attacking on the physical level, but even on the subtle level. And that's something I've really been thinking about lately, you know, because even if you move past just the gross, like sex desire and things and lusting for money or wealth or fame, you know, then you go to these more like subtle keep moving up these subtle and more subtle aspects. And I recently have been reading The Beggar 3 about removing the false ego.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just interesting because, Gurudev really exemplified that, like moving beyond the false ego. And like once you start to really, really confront that, it's kind of a really heavy thing. I was just listening to a lecture by him recently where he was mentioning, in the beginning of Krishna consciousness, when you come to devotional service, it's they just say chant and be happy, but as you move along the path and you go to higher and higher levels, it becomes increasingly it's more intense, because you're getting to these things where it's more the internal work of kind of removing all these layers of who you think you are. And it's funny, I was just listening also to His Holiness Bhakti Damodar Swami. He was giving a class on Jayadeva Chaturdasi, and he was talking about enemies, like no one is really our enemies. This is kind of a false conception made by the mind and all these things. And I was really thinking about that, like, yeah, that's like a hard thing to uproot, this mentality of, oh, that's my friend, that's my enemy. I like this person, I don't like that person, like it's just this natural tendency of the mind, so that's really difficult to move past that sometimes, to really remove those layers of false ego. So I just thought it was interesting that he had signed that book for me in that way. And now, like I said, just reading Beggar 3, it's like almost like he wrote that for everyone who's wanting to move to those deeper levels. So it's really, really pertinent, and how his instructions are still very much alive, and he's still very much alive in those instructions.
So Jayadeva, a couple of questions now, and then maybe if you still have like one memory or so to share. I'm just gonna go over to Leela and see if she has any questions she want to ask you.
Sure.
Thank you so much, Jayadeva Prabhu. So grateful to hear those things, particularly that email. That is, I was already thinking, I'm going to hear that again and again. And just these memories of him just keep adding these layers of what we know of Maharaj, and just getting to know him as a person more and more. I think I was only curious about, do you feel less selfish now? Like, have you, in retrospect, from when how does that feel now? Do you feel that you've made, I mean, it's obvious, as we progress, there's this change, but I'm just curious as to how you feel you've progressed in that, based on the lessons that he gave you.
Well, I'm definitely not selfless, but I think sometimes I look back at that time with him, and I always have this, it's not a regret, but it's like I wish I could have the mentality I have now and be with him, serving him in that situation, because he would always tell me that too, like I was being ungrateful and just being too selfishly absorbed in my wants or desires, were to the point where it would distract me from realizing how wonderful that situation was. And he would often say, like, why don't you go visit like a hospital, or like a mental institution, or somewhere, or a prison, so visit somewhere where people are really suffering, just to increase your own gratitude, to kind of put things in perspective, So no, it's definitely, I think becoming selfless is still something that, is a constant process, a constant endeavor, because our natural tendency is just, it's not to be selfless. It's not a natural thing, because we're so conditioned into, wanting our own comforts, our own, it's not like instinctually most people would just be like, oh, I want to inconvenience myself, you know, in some way. But obviously when there's that love is there, then it's not so difficult to be selfless. But yeah, it's definitely it's a cultivation, it's a process, which I haven't attained yet, but I'm hoping by my Gurudev's mercy that before I die somehow have some level of that.
Kishori, do you have any question for Jayadev? Kishori Rani, this is our team, Jayadev. And we introduce our team every time we start programs. Today we didn't do it. So you just met with Leela and now you're meeting with Kishori Rani, and you met, and Anna was on. Anna is also on with her husband. And of course, Ekavir is here. So Kishori Rani.
Actually, I had a similar question about what was the answer of Bhakti Maharaj about when you were asking why it's so hard to be selfless. You mentioned that he answered the same question a few times, but what was the actual answer?
Well, it's funny because my memory of that time, I don't remember what he told me, which is probably part of the problem. Why I wasn't listening. But I think he kind of summed it up in that email, even just the excerpt that I read, you know, where he was saying this is why you struggle with being selfless, is because you're trying to deny your feelings, when in reality being selfless is not just like, oh, I'm going to do all these things for other people, but really internally I'm resentful, or I'm, you know, but there has to be a genuine desire, you know, to want to help others. And yeah, unfortunately, I don't remember exactly what his answer was.
I think something that I remember, Jayadev, is you came when you were really young. You were like, what, 19 years old or something?
Yeah, I was right out of high school. So yeah, I think
Yeah.
19.
Right out of high school, and immediately went into brahmacharya and getting trained by the guru. So that was I always remember when I would come and see you with him, you know, I was thinking, whoa, he's getting the supreme training.
Yeah. I think that was by your mercy also, because I think the opportunity for the service was there at Gita Nagari, and I think you had recommended that maybe I could do it, and that's how I think I even got into doing all the emails and stuff like that.
And actually, you're such a dedicated servant of his that you even went to Africa and was there for some time. So you really like showed your commitment and your devotion in so many ways.
That's a whole nother book.
Yeah, that was selfless. That was selfless.
I don't know how you did that there.
Well, there were so many beautiful people that was there, you know. Krishna, the externals was a little difficult. However, the devotees was just so beautiful. The people that were coming, they wanted Krishna so badly. So that was, and we just had Prithu on, and Prithu was just sharing about, you know, that experience of someone coming to Africa and giving them Krishna consciousness. So that was mercy of Prabhupada Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. I'm going to ask Ekavir if he has anything for you. Ekavir,
wait, I was going to say that has to be chapter 4 of your book.
What, Africa?
Yeah, the Africa memories.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's years.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jayadev. I really appreciate it.
Haribol.
So I'm appreciating the theme of selflessness and selfless service. And of course, becoming selfless, that could be a multi-life, what to speak of a lifelong endeavor. But for those of us who are trying to, or at least have a desire to become selfless, what would you say would be a baby step that we can take to move towards becoming selfless, since you served so closely a person that was exemplary in selflessness?
Well, I think that's kind of the answer right there, is just the baby steps, you know, like And like I said, just even for me, just doing that little exercise of waking up in the morning and thinking like, well, what can I do today for someone else? And then watching, throughout the day as those opportunities sort of present themselves. And I've had that too, especially even in married life, that's always a mirror that's there. And so even that, like I see that opportunities arise there, and sometimes the gut reaction is like, I don't want to do that. Or like, and then you're like, oh wait, this is the opportunity. Like this is kind of Paramatma, this is Krishna, this is Gurudev sort of giving the opportunity, like, okay, you want to serve, and then here's the opportunity. Like I was saying, that tendency is so difficult to kind of overcome, to think, okay, this is my chance to help someone, but just kind of, I guess, always being aware of it. And then you'll see the opportunities when that consciousness is there, if you're really trying to help someone. And I find it comes in all different ways, when you're consciously aware of it. You see like, oh, here's a chance, or here's a chance, or here's another opportunity to do something. Even like little small gestures, like Brajalila Manta was saying, as an artist, sometimes I just make drawings and I'll just, send them to somebody or gift them to people. And, we've had people stop by here at the house and, just like, oh, I have something for you. And I run downstairs and come back with some artwork or something or a print. And they're like, oh, wow, thank you. Like even just little things like that, I think is, it's not like you're changing their life, but it's, it's just something to kind of uplift them or inspire them. So
this is our last question from Anna. Anna, if you have a question for Jayadeva, and then we'll close out. And we want to invite you back again, Jayadeva. We make these programs a little short so that somehow people can just get the essence of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj.
Right.
So Anna, can you bring that picture?
Thanks so much for coming out tonight. As you were saying, how as you were describing your Maharaj, I was wondering how much be able to, like, for you as a new devotee, to be able to take so much of like from the outside, like from the material perspective, it sounds pretty harsh, right? Like those things like, oh, you're too selfish, or oh, you're thinking about yourself too much, or you like, it's kind of like, it's pretty harsh, right? So I was thinking, so you had to feel something so special from Maharaj. You had to feel such connection, such something, like kind of so much love, or so much, there has to be something for you in it to stay and to take it, and to be so humble and to appreciate the criticism, or to appreciate Maharaj trying to like give you the pointers, right? Like, or how to do better. So I was wondering what was it for you to that made it so worth it that you would not change it for anything else?
Well, I think that was part of my struggle, in those early years, being young and a neophyte, just new to Krishna consciousness and devotional service. And, it was a struggle. And I think, there's even more to the story, but again, it would take hours to tell it. But, it wasn't that I was always so selfless and that I was always so humble. And, there were even points where I would doubt, like, why is he treating me like this? Or, and that again is a very neophyte conception in the guru-disciple relationship, to be like, oh, my guru doesn't care about me, or, thinking in the mind, getting in the mental platform, like, oh, maybe he's just using me for service or this or that. So I definitely went through a lot of those, that inner turmoil, which then kind of led to me sort of, eventually moving out of Gita Nagari and, having different kinds of struggles. And I think that was kind of, in one sense, created some aparadhs on my part, guru aparadh, and just thinking in those ways. So yeah, it definitely it wasn't all, sort of rosy, or that I was always humble. because that is, like you're saying, that is difficult to hear those things. And, you know, if you're not in the and that's why I was saying, I kind of wish I could go back to that time with who I am now to be able to process those things better, you know, and take those things more for my spiritual advancement rather than, you know, being on that mental platform of, you know, and being selfish, like this is just too exhausting or too demanding. Because there's even a whole pastime where I actually ran away from Gita Nagari, which I'm sure Brajalila remembers that, where I did this whole plan, and I got this devotee to drive me to the train station. I didn't tell anybody I was leaving, and because I was just having a mental breakdown, and I was like, I got to get out of here. This is too much. But yeah, that's a whole story. But I'll have to come back and tell that one later.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we'll let you come back and tell all the internal stories. Well, thank you, Anna. We're going to have Leela close us out. But before we do that, I just want to show something that Jayadeva painted that we have offered in the Institute House to His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. So this is one of his drawings. And this is Krishna. And you can see how talented he is. And so this is right here sitting at the chair of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. So that connection with you and your guru is there with Krishna. Haribo. So Leela, you can please close us out.
Jayadeva Prabhu, thank you so much again. This has been so enlightening, and even on a personal note, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but I feel like I am. I'm always struggling with selfishness. And I was just thinking of how incredibly fortunate you were to be with someone like Ekavira Prabhu said, that was the like ultimate example of that. And this is, I feel like I repeat this with every person that we talk to, how selflessness and compassion are the words that describe him, and they're alive for him. This and it comes through all his devotees. They have this mood of being selfless, of being compassionate, and just this unconditional love that they're always striving for. So it really struck me that, you know, as his students, you were picking these things up from him, but it struck me that the reason why everyone takes that mood that he has is because he was living it. And the email that he wrote, he's showing himself as that student, someone who's always striving for that, and who's putting his spiritual master in the center, and the reason why he can do all these things. So those things are priceless. I'm so grateful that you came and that you spoke, and that I've actually heard these things tonight. So I thank you so much, and please come back. We're so grateful.
Yeah, I was saying earlier too, I thank all of you. I don't know if you heard that part, but I thank all of you for, arranging this. It's wonderful. Yeah,
this is the Inter-IFAS team.
Hari will.
Hari, Hari. Thank you so much. And we're looking forward to you coming back again. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Kishore. Thank you, Jayadeva Prabhu. Thank you, Kishore Rani. Thank you, Leela. Thank you, Anna. Thank you, Roshan. Thank you, Ekavira Prabhu. Hari, Hari.
Hari.